We're so excited to be here today. We're so excited to be here with the Nash family. They are our family through MPS1, and so really, even though they're not our blood family, they feel so much like family, and we met them in person probably 2 years ago. So I'm so excited to have them here on the podcast to share a little bit about their story. So thank you so much, Courtney and Michael. We're so excited again to have you here. So if you can just you take the floor and you just share a little bit about yourself, introduce yourselves, and we'll get started with that.
Take it away.
Ladies first.
I'm Courtney Nash, and this is my husband, Michael. We have a 4-year-old daughter, Blayne, and a son that just turned 2, Hank.
Little Hank.
Oh, yes, little Hank. He's a mess. We love him, though. I guess from the outside looking in, we seem like a normal family. Maybe that's our own delusion, but we just like spending time with our family. We have some land in Middle Tennessee, so we're working on getting lots of farm animals, kind of living the farm life. And a lot of our week is centered around God and going to church, and we're about to start homeschooling our kids, so that's kind of our day-to-day.
Yeah. So, like I said, Blayne has MPS1. I think you might have mentioned that too. So tell us a little bit about Blayne's diagnosis journey. And I know that you're from Texas. They don't know that you lived in Texas. Kind of how you got here. Either.
That's what I was about to say. Like, are you originally from?
Surprise.
Blayne is originally from Texas. We are not.
He's obviously not read anything.
I kind of fly by night. You know?
So that is a big part of their story. So tell us a little bit about Blayne's diagnosis.
Well, we were actually very fortunate. We know that the diagnosis journey can be really tough for some people. And even though it might not seem like we were lucky, we think that we are. So I'm from East Tennessee. He's from Middle Tennessee. We moved to Fort Worth, Texas for his job. We were out there like 5 or 6 years, and that's where Blayne was born. So MPS is not on the newborn screen in Texas, so she was not diagnosed at birth. And the first year of her life was relatively normal. Like, she was never sick. Like, she was very easygoing. She was hitting all of her milestones. So we really didn't have any like red flags until right about 1, we decided to move back home by the grace of God. It was like truly like I was driving one day and I was like, let's move home to Tennessee. And Michael's like, okay.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was not in the cards. But right around the same time, we noticed like a lump forming on her back. But again, we just thought, like whatever. She had pectus excavatum. That is one thing she had. So we were like, it's just another abnormality. It's fine. And so we got a new pediatrician when we moved home to Tennessee, and we just asked him like, hey, she has this lump on her back. She has the sunken chest. Her head's a little big. Do you think any of this is connected and maybe making it harder for her to learn to walk? And he was like, let me think about it. So the next day he called me and was like, I've talked to some colleagues and this isn't our wheelhouse. We just think you should go see a geneticist at Vanderbilt. So like a month later, we had a Zoom call because it was still during COVID and all that.
Oh, gosh.
Fun times. And she like interviewed us for a few minutes. And literally the first thing that the geneticist at Vanderbilt put on the screen was mucopolysaccharidosis. We'll never forget it. And she said, I noticed she was born in Texas. It's not on the newborn screen. So this is something that we need to rule out quickly or act quickly for treatment. She was like, the gibbous on her back is a telltale sign of this disease. So that's what we're going to work on first.
Wow.
So, I mean, that is not the case for most people. So
No, our actual diagnosis journey was relatively quick. From the time we saw the pediatrician and brought up basically the first concern to him to test confirming it was maybe a month and a half, 2 months total.
yeah.
So we were very blessed in that aspect because we hadn't had really many signs of kind of what the other kids see with the ear infections or the things of those nature. We hadn't really seen any of that. So from kind of the first sign that I guess we noticed as parents to getting the test confirmation, it was roughly about 2 months. So relatively quick, and we're absolutely blessed for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the story sounds just like Kennedy, like she had no abnormalities other than the gibbous, and she had pectus excavatum that we found out. Like, I mean, there's
She'd
so
never
many.
been sick a day in her life.
Yeah, never had the ear infections, never been sick, never, like you said, hitting all the milestones and everything. Like, that is so, that's crazy that they were so alike. And
Yeah.
So for people listening that may be listening right now, we are filming this in September of 2024. So as of now, is it on newborn screening in Texas? Is MPS1 on newborn screening in Texas? Do you know?
No.
It is
It is not.
still
No.
not. Wow.
It's still not.
Um,
And Blayne
Vander-
was born in,
Blayne was born in March 13th, 2020.
so still over 4 years,
Mhm.
and it still is not on newborn screening in Texas. That's big.
And Vanderbilt did reach out on her behalf. Like the geneticist and the department presented with like pictures of Blayne and stuff to the like state board or whatever.
There's
So
also a family, I think, from the Houston area
that's pushing.
that's pushing for it as well, because they, I think, found out after the 2-year timeline.
I think they might, they may be in gene therapy right now.
I think they are.
I think
yes.
I've made contact with them just recently.
So I know they went to the board as well to try to get it pushed on
Mhm.
So for those listening, MPS, it's very important to get diagnosed early for MPS1. Very important to be diagnosed before the age of 2. So I think that's kind of important to know right kind of at this point. So Blayne was diagnosed, was it 16 months?
18 months.
At
like
18
exactly.
months.
Mhm.
And then from there, kind of your treatment journey, once you realized you had the diagnosis, what were your next steps?
That time's hard to process because it was a lot. Because we were fortunate and it did move quickly. Our geneticist was very proactive. So I had this little app on my phone for Vanderbilt. And I mean, every single day there was just like another appointment popping up because we had to see all the specialists and make sure there wasn't any damage done. And then she started the enzyme replacement therapy weekly. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a infusion that the kids can receive weekly leading up to transplant. And for us, it took like 6 to 8 hours. I don't know if it was the same for y'all, but it was a very long day that she was attached to that weekly. So we started that. We also started physical therapy. We hadn't started OT or developmental therapy yet, but so we had 2 things weekly. And then on top of that, all of the other appointments to assess the damage. She also had a couple procedures leading up to transplant. They went ahead and like put tubes in her ears to reduce the risk of infection because that's usually common in MPS kids. And then she had her Hickman line inserted.
Yep.
In December. Is that right? Or no, that was in January. Sorry, all the procedures kind of run together sometimes. So from September to December it was just
2 to 3 doctors visits every week and infusion almost. It was a busy time.
And then
And how
everyone
far-
calling.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
How far is Vanderbilt from where you all live now? Like, what kind of travel time are we talking?
So where we live now, it's probably about an hour drive. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, we were living with my parents at the time. So we were maybe 20 minutes from
Okay.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt at the time.
So another God thing
It was
to be
another
right there.
God thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
Because we
we're-
moved in with his parents while we were trying to build. And we were like, this is going to, that's hard to like take a step back and whatever and move in with family. We're very grateful they allowed us to be there.
Yep.
But when all this happened and being 20 minutes from Vanderbilt, that was
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to travel. It was 4 hours to Cincinnati, and we would try to make that in day trips a lot. And it was a lot on us and a lot on Kennedy at the same time. So what a blessing to be so
Yeah.
close to that.
So you got the diagnosis in September, and you mentioned December. So she was diagnosed in September. When was her bone marrow transplant? When did you admit for that?
January 6th.
Yeah.
January.
Got admitted January 6th, and transplant day was the 17th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Of 2022.
Correct.
So I know sometimes the trauma pushes things out of your brain, and there's things you don't remember, but what do you remember about the bone marrow transplant process, and how long were you inpatient? And I think some people don't know that to have a bone marrow transplant, for that prep, you have to go through chemo. So just tell us a little bit about the transplant journey for you all, or for Blayne, if you remember.
So at the time, when we were going through it, we were kind of shielded to the, I guess, effects of a lot of it, effects of chemo. And looking back at the pictures now, it tears both of us up more than it did during the time we were going through it. God shielded us from that hurt so we could be strong for Blayne. So it is a little bit of a blur, but we were inpatient at Vanderbilt for 27 days after being admitted.
And that's not typical. I do want to say for especially families who haven't gone through transplant or who have been, we were preparing to be inpatient for months. Like, I know you all were upwards of 100 days with Kennedy, so we were prepared to be there for a while, and we had we didn't go in with any expectations. We knew it was going to be hard, but Blayne, I truly, I know God protected her. I don't know if it's her stem cell doctor was fabulous and tried like a little bit of a different regimen with her, a little bit different conditioning treatment with the chemo. And her body, she had very few side effects from chemo. She lost her hair, so that was the biggest like physical, I guess, side effect from the chemo. But she started showing signs of engraftment, and that's so when she received her stem cell transplant, she received cord blood through like her Hickman line on January 17th, and within the first week, she was showing signs of engraftment, which is wild because they told us cord blood usually takes longer. And every morning they would come in, they're like, we don't want to say anything or jinx it. It's looking like that, but we need more days to make sure that we can say she is showing signs of engraftment. And every day her numbers just
kept going up.
Yeah. And then around the end of January, they started mentioning going home, and we were
blown away.
We were like, are we allowed to take her home? Like,
are you sure?
Yeah.
I've heard this is normal time is like 60 days. Why are you telling us at 24 days?
Yeah.
Maybe discharge. It was, we were blown away.
That is blown away.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to real quick on just the fact that everything was a blur and you were built so strong through the whole process that, now looking back at, like, isn't it amazing how, like, what the human body does and what God does to take care of you and heal you and protect you so that you are strong and you're that, like, it's like, I almost think of it on an aspect of like, it's a complete blur. It was game time and we did the game and we did what we had to do and push through. So that's one thing I kind of want to say for everybody. Like, I know it sounds scary, the stuff that we talk about, and you're like, I can never do this, but oh my gosh, like, you just do it. You just go in and you just do it.
Yep.
Yeah, and people would say things that, and I know they were being encouraging, like, God picks like strong people to do this. Like, we are not strong people. No one is equipped to like
to go through this.
Yeah, that is fake news. Like, no one is designed to go through this. Like, that came from like, sorry, it's gonna make me a little emotional. But that came through specific prayer.
Yep. Him and him alone is what that came through. But during the process, we were like, yeah, like, she's doing fine. Like, we'd FaceTime people and they'd be like, oh, she looks so sickly, basically. And I was like,
Well,
no,
they would just
no.
cry. Sometimes we would face some people and they would just start
Cry.
bawling. And we were like, what's fine? Like, we're
It's fine.
fine.
Yeah, it's great.
We're having a blast.
I remember when we were getting our haircuts together. I mean, that was a fun time for us in the hospital. Now,
I can't look at that picture.
no, I can't look at the picture
Yeah.
without bawling up like a little baby. So
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
That's
I feel like the same, that going through it, we really didn't realize how bad it was. And I kept saying that people say, I don't know how you do it. And it was just like some kind of supernatural strength. And one of my things during Kennedy's transplant was Jesus calling. Somebody had given me that. And it just felt like every time I would open it up, it just kind of gave me like, okay, like
Yep.
it was easy to understand. And I didn't have to be Bible thumping, trying to make understand what he was saying. And I just felt like it was speaking to me, and it got us through every day. We would post about it, and we didn't think she looked that bad, and then you go back and
Yeah.
you're like,
Oh my goodness.
gosh, she
Yeah.
looks so sick. And so when you're in it every day, you just don't see it. But the people that don't see them every day, and you call and you FaceTime them and they hadn't seen them in a few days, they don't know what to say, and they're floored. And for those grandparents and family, it's hard to watch. And then you're sitting there saying, here I am being strong, and
Yeah.
you're crying. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So it is really hard. And I think there's a lot of misconception, and there's a lot of challenges that we go through that people still don't understand. So what are some of those misconceptions that you think are out there about MPS1, or maybe even about a bone marrow transplant?
I think the misconception, I guess, a lot of the people we've talked to about Blayne's journey is she had her bone marrow transplant. She's fixed. She's all better now. And just reiterating that the bone marrow transplant is not a cure. It is treatment, predominantly around the blood-brain barrier, to kind of prevent the cognitive decline. It doesn't cure her of this disease. It doesn't, prevent us from having orthopedic surgeries throughout her life. So I think that's the most common thing I run into in conversations about our journey.
I agree. And that she looks normal, and she's only 4. So I feel like we're still in the honeymoon phase. I know MPS families get that. I feel like there is kind of a grace period between transplant and when like things start progressing. Like it's kind of easy for her abnormalities to kind of blend in at this age, if you will. So a lot of people are like, she just seems like a normal toddler, but that's not the case, and things will progress, and she still faces challenges every day that other kids don't. I mean, we see that with Hank.
Yeah.
That's been really hard. Like there are some things that he's doing that she can't do. So that's kind of hard. It's like, oh, I'm really proud of you, Hank. And then you have that like gut punch moment. Like, oh, Blayne's been trying to do that for like a year.
Yeah.
That's hard.
I feel like that's the same.
Yeah.
Back to they had the bone marrow transplant. Why are you still talking about it? Why are you still raising money? Why are you still trying to raise awareness? She looks so good. We see your kids at the ball game, or we see them walking at school, and they look normal. So I completely agree with that misconception. So I guess back to Blayne and Hank. So Hank is unaffected. So hearing you talk about an affected child and an unaffected child, we don't know that, but we do know a little bit about the differences. How do you handle that? How do you, I don't know, how do you
not treat one, like you said, that gut punch? Like how do you all decipher or try to not treat the other one differently?
I think we just focus on like celebrating what they do well.
Yeah.
And it looks different.
It does.
But I mean, even Blayne, like when he does something, even if she can't do it, she's like, good job, Hank.
Oh,
yeah.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
So
I think just taking away because you always always want to compare your children to other people's children and the milestones they're hitting. And through this journey, that's kind of one of the things, especially me. I know Courtney's a lot better at not doing that, but one thing for me that has been the most pivotal change is not doing that anymore. And regardless of if Hank did something, at 2 that Blayne does at 5, just treating that victory, treating that milestone as a significant moment, no matter when it happens. Not having those kind of milestone expectations and just celebrating the wins when they do come.
That's what we say. Celebrate the small things and thank God for the small things.
Yeah.
So talking about Hank, let's talk about Hank a little bit. I think that it really varies how people feel once they get a diagnosis. And so Hank is your second child, and you knew that Blayne was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. So did you know that you wanted to have more kids? Did you do any kind of testing to make sure that Hank didn't have MPS1, or you just hoped for the best? Tell us a little bit about it. Hankster, how he came into play.
It's a loaded question. Well, we knew, before Blayne was diagnosed, we knew we wanted a couple kids, probably more than 2. And so, before Blayne was diagnosed, we were talking about, having another kid. And then Blayne was diagnosed, so we kind of
put all that on kind of hold,
back
burner.
We just didn't, it was a lot at once. So then we actually found out that we were pregnant with Hank, on her transplant day or around it. They would come and do her lab draws, in her crib in the morning. And I mean, by this point, you're not fazed by any of that. And I go over there and they're doing her labs, and I'll literally get nauseous and go and throw up in the bathroom. And I was like, oh no. And so, yeah, that's how we found out about Hank. And so it was shocking and terrifying, because I don't know if y'all were the same, but when people say, oh, you're going to have a bone marrow transplant, it sounds like a simple process. It sounds like, oh, you're going to get someone else's cells. It's going to be quick and easy. No, when we were in the thick of it, I was like, how can I do this again? Which you all did it again. So I know it's possible, but we were just what have we done?
We have made a mistake.
Yeah. Because we were realistically, if this kid,
we'd be back in here in
the same year.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I mean, that was a lot. And so we definitely decided to do the amniocentesis, because we were we've got to know. It's not going to change anything, but we need at least to have a plan
mentally
and be
prepared for that. Yeah.
So that was a very long 16 weeks to wait for that. And then another 2 to wait for the results. And I will never forget the day we were working out when it populated into my chart. Mm-hmm. And I read the results, and it was Hank is a heterozygous, and I couldn't remember what that meant.
Wait, is that yes or no? I don't know.
And so we literally are calling my sister and brother-in-law. He was in med school. We were what does heterozygous mean? Does he have it or not? And they were calm down. It's 6 a.m. So yeah, he's just a carrier. Thank God. But yeah, that was very stressful. And now on this side of it, I mean, things could change, but as of now, we don't have a plan to do another one. I don't know how we could do that with our 2 at home.
That is so crazy. I couldn't imagine, because even at that point, you talked about you didn't know what to expect of a bone marrow transplant. And so you didn't know that you would only be in there 20-something days. And so being right there, right at transplant day, you don't know how long you're going to be in the hospital. Now you're pregnant. It's transplant day. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So
we had just gone through the chemo aspect of it, and I was like, no.
Not to mention our house hadn't even broke ground yet. So we were what is...
Fair.
Wow. We don't even have a place to live.
Basement.
Wow.
Oh, and you all continued. You were building a house while she was in transplant, or that didn't start until...
We broke ground a month and a half after we got home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's
That's still very amazing.
we were already too far in. So
Most people don't know the rare life, but I feel like I hear it all the time.
Mhm.
If you make it through building a house, you're soulmates. You'll make it forever. So now you
transplant, building a house, and pregnancy, we're good.
All in the same year.
soulmates. Oh, so you talked about living in your family's basement. You moved back home to Tennessee from Texas, and so you are back home, and you're kind of with family. What was your support system like through all of this?
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when we had realistically just moved back, we had been home maybe 2 months when we got the diagnosis. So our support group was mainly our family. A couple of my friends that still live in, the local area with us, but it was predominantly our family just being there for us.
Yeah, because most of our like closest friends at the time were back in Texas now, so that was kind of weird. In our family, everyone was incredibly supportive. Like, I don't know what we would have done without them. But we were talking about this earlier. Even though so many people are rallying around you, you still feel very like alone.
Yep.
Initially, anyways. Like, because even if, like our moms or dads or whoever want to help, they still don't truly get it because it's not their kid.
Yep.
So that was kind of, even though we had these people around us, what's that saying where you're like, you can be in a crowded room but still feel like alone? I feel like we felt like that a lot in the beginning.
Yeah, I think we felt that too. At that point where I don't remember how long you had been in Tennessee. So like you had started going to church and you had a little bit of those connections, or it was truly you moved to Tennessee, it's just you and your family going into this?
We had just started to test out some churches in the area.
We had only gone a handful of times.
When it happened, and at that point, I think we went maybe once or twice more. It just...
Well, let me back up for a second. So this is coming off of COVID too. So like in Fort Worth, we couldn't like be in person at our church. So that was really hard. So we were very excited when we got home. Like things are kind of normal again. We can go in person. And then she's transplanted and then you can't be around people.
Yeah.
So that was hard. 2 years of isolation and not being able to be a part of your church. I mean, you can watch online, but like it's not the same.
Or the world. It was so much fun.
Watching the world, yeah. Everyone's lives go on.
Just when everybody started to get back out and start doing things again is right basically when we got the diagnosis, and we're like, well,
goodbye again.
Back into isolation.
Yep.
I kind of laugh at COVID. Sorry, that people were freaking out because they had to wear masks. They had to use hand sanitizer. They had to wash their hands. I was like, we just went through years of this in the hospital. Like, this is simple. This is my everyday life. And now y'all are freaking out because you need to do this stuff. Like, I just kind of laughed through it.
I will say COVID helped us quite a bit because we did not do well at the beginning of COVID with the isolation. We had to do that in Texas. And at that point, the only people were talking to were really family or like super close friends.
Yeah.
Well, we had a newborn. All of our friends had newborns. So all of our friends were like,
yeah,
we're going to err on the side of caution here. So it was just the three of us just hanging out all through COVID.
And we got to do it all over again.
So I will say COVID did kind of help us prepare for that mindset you have to go into basically when you go into isolation.
I feel like I do want to touch on like that too. I feel like post-COVID, I feel like it does help prepare families, but I feel like it in a way is trickier for families now because everyone has very strong opinions about, like the mask and stuff. So I feel like something I do want to bring attention to is like having grace for people. Like if you see people still wearing masks, it doesn't mean that they're like terrified of COVID. Like they could be post-transplant.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was something, we would be going into public in our masks and stuff. And I felt like we had to be like, we're not scared of COVID. Like we're
trying to explain yourself.
Like we're trying to protect our immunocompromised child at home. So I feel like that's something people kind of forget about post-COVID is that's not the only reason people have to, you know, isolate or like wear a mask or, you know, be extra careful around. So
yeah, I agree with that. And that's, I was amazed at like the kind of family arguments that it brought up for COVID too, because we were scared to death. Like we didn't, with the way our kids were, and you know, everybody else was kind of just living normal life and didn't worry about it. And we're like, we can't just do that. Like we have, like, I don't know what this is. It's something obviously, but we have to worry about our kids more than I'm worried about the disease. I'm worried about the disease getting to them. And
which I think goes back to people not really understanding MPS1 as well, because yes, we were worried about COVID, but it was because of MPS1. You know, they have compromised airways. Because of MPS1, they have more respiratory infections and ear infections, and then plus they've been immune compromised, so is it going to be even harder for them to overcome? I mean, like, you just really didn't know, and people think you're being silly or whatever. And even before COVID, I can remember a few times when we would go out, we were wiping down the tables with the Clorox wipes and they were eating off of a mat. You know, people would come by, oh, is it your first child? And, you know, you won't be doing that for the second. You know, you get tired of explaining yourself and you're just like, yeah, you know, it is, you know, whatever. And I think that's one thing that's been hard for years is just, you feel like you have to explain yourself over and over. And even after you're done explaining, they turn around and walk away and they still don't get it.
No.
I feel like we just kind of went through that at the school. We had went in and we were talking to the teachers, and one of the teachers said, thank you for sharing that. I really didn't know that. And I'm like, what have I been doing for 7 years? You know, what do you mean? So it really just takes that one certain keyword sometimes for people to it click, and then sometimes it never does click. So I've never really thought about transplant post-COVID and people's association, you know, with the mask, because we didn't really deal with that during transplant. So it's interesting. So you're out of the hospital once you all got out of the hospital with Blayne. So is it still COVID then? What year is that?
So that was 2022. So
okay,
we're like out of it, but I mean, things are still.
Right. Once you got out, were you inpatient a lot more, or really you kind of got out and you've kind of been to normal life, whatever normal is for you?
Well, I don't think it was normal. I think another maybe misconception of like transplant, people are like, oh, you're home. I feel like the hardest part didn't start until we got home. Like, that was a lot. I mean, we have no medical backgrounds. Like, before transplant, I would like see blood and throw up. So I've grown a lot in that area. I'm over that. I knew I was over that when she was having a blood transfusion in the hospital and I was eating dinner as her blood was being pumped through. I was like, I've really overcome this. But we got home and she came home on 13 medications.
Yeah. 13 medications, central line,
and we were still giving her, we were still giving her, I don't know if y'all had to do one of those, like an IV at home, and her NG tube.
The ball.
Yeah, the magnesium ball or whatever, like that we had to do and hook her up. And we had to go to classes before we were discharged to learn how to do this, but that was a full-time job. Her medications alone, her sterile dressing changes at home. I mean, I think people don't realize how much care is still involved. And on top of that, just protecting them because they're so vulnerable. Any illness can be a major setback. Yeah. So that was a lot. And then trying to like still have a normal childhood for her.
I think we were still going back to Vandy, 3 to 4 days a week at that point?
In the beginning, we were still going like 3 days a week to Vanderbilt. So in the beginning, I was like, it would be easier just to still be in the hospital at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still going every 3 months for lab draws post-transplant. Wow. So it didn't return to normal for a lot. And for those of you who don't know what a central line or Hickman line is, I mean, it's a line like directly into one of your veins. Am I saying that correctly? Artery, vein?
Your
Forgot
One of the
already.
things that carries
Veins,
blood.
something
up
with
your heart.
blood. But it, like the tubes like literally are coming out of her chest. So it has to stay sterile at all times. But with that, there's a really high risk of infection. So she had that for a couple months at home.
Yep.
So you're living with the fear of like protecting this line with an
Yeah, 'cause
active 2-year-old.
if they get a fever at all, like,
Yeah.
normally you take Tylenol or ibuprofen, you send them back to bed. But a fever with a central line or even a port for our sake, like even, they had to access a port
Yeah.
under the skin.
It was a hospital visit.
Yeah, had to go straight to the ER. And before Lincoln's transplant, what did we do? Like, we were in there 6 times, like in a week, because he every day kept catching fevers.
Yeah.
Because you got to kind of explain that, they won't, they're afraid of an infection in those central
Right.
lines. They're surgically inserted. They're already in the bloodstream, so they're worried about that infection in the bloodstream. And so they want antibiotics within 2 hours of basically realizing that they have a fever or an infection. So they want to make sure they clear it out of the bloodline, or it can be actually fatal to the kid. So
Yeah, that's
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I just want
no, you explained that very well. But yeah, that's another fear that you have to live with that people don't realize, like we're not being silly when we don't want to go out or do these things. Like we just can't risk it. It is not worth it. And that wouldn't be fair to Blayne. So we fortunately only had to do 1 trip. No, we had 2. I lied. We went to the ER. She caught a fever and we had to go to the ER. Fortunately, they give you like special care. You just call them. You kind of feel like VIP if that's a thing in the hospital. They whisk you back. And that one was, I don't even know what it was. But
I think it was a teething.
Yeah, that was weird because she was still getting teeth at that point. And then the second fever, we did have to stay.
Yeah, we had to stay
a couple days. They never really like figured out what it was, but they gave her antibiotics to be safe. But fortunately, we only encountered that twice until she got her Hickman line removed and she got like the portacath put in, which is another way to easily access or give like IVs, lab draws, all that, but it's under the skin. So that one was a little lower risk, but she still had that a year post-transplant.
Yeah.
We didn't want to get rid of Lincoln's. Like
Yeah.
we didn't. It always, because they put numbing cream on and numb before they access the port. And so he'd never been stuck really, that he'd remembered. And it was really hard for old Mama Bear here to let go of knowing her little baby boy was going to experience an IV or a blood draw. But we didn't want to get rid of it at all.
Here's a fun tip with lab draws, because we did want the port out just because we had finally moved into our house and we're an hour away from Vanderbilt now, so it just would make us feel better. But now when we go do our lab draws, we still have all of our lidocaine cream. I don't know if y'all do this, but we literally lather her little arms up and put the stickers over it. And so we just pull it off when she goes in and doesn't feel a thing. I don't know if that's allowed, but that's a fun trick if.
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell the doctor.
Yeah, we are not medical professionals here.
I cannot give you that advice. I don't know if it's allowed, but save your lidocaine cream.
It works.
It works, and there's no tears. So,
Well, that's a good lead into the next question, because that was one thing that I wanted to ask you also. Through transplant, or even the medical journey, what are some tips, or do you have tips, or maybe a product or something that just you're so glad you knew about it, it got you through, you think it's a great tip for the next person, whether it's a tip, whether it's a product, and then after you answer that, we talked a little bit before, but maybe hospital essentials. But for right now, what would just kind of maybe one tip, and maybe it's a person, maybe it's a podcast. I don't know what that looks like for you, but if somebody said, what's one tip you have for me going into this, do you have one?
ooh, I feel like I have one. I don't know if you have one, but I do.
Go right ahead.
Be honest with your kids. I feel like this can go with even like parents with healthy kids. Like if your kid's going to get a lab draw, like explain to them what's going to happen and don't sugarcoat it. Like don't be like, it's not going to hurt. Yeah, it's probably going to hurt. I feel like that's been something that's helped Blayne like cope with it. Like We talk about what's going to happen. You know, she has like pretend doctor stuff at home, but they look like the real stuff. Like, I feel like we showed her, so she knows what to expect. She knows what's going to happen. And like, sometimes we're like, yeah, it's going to be a shot and it might hurt, but like, I'm right here with you. So I feel like that's something that's like really like helped her get through it.
I think that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the at-home doctor kit, I think, was helpful.
Did the hospital
So
give you that, or you
In
all
the very
ordered it?
beginning, they did.
The hospital gave us some things, and then we had like a Fisher Price playset or something of that nature that had other things in it. But she would basically give me blood draws, infusions, all sorts of things, and just being able to kind of play through that at home.
It wasn't as scary.
Yeah,
I mean, it
made
still
it made
is
it
hard,
more
but
normal and,
yeah.
and kind of less frightening when we had to go do it in person.
Yeah.
But it's like she was playing with daddy at home.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
But I feel like that's one thing now, like now when I go to a doctor, I'll sometimes get sweet nurses, and I know they mean well, but they're like, yeah, like it's not gonna hurt. Like, we have a little pokey. I'm like, dude, just tell her, like, you're getting a shot. It might hurt a little. Which arm do you want? And Blayne that's what she wants now. And she'll look at him and be like, this arm. And just kind of roll with it. I think that's kind of helped her get through it.
Yep.
That's a good one. And choices. That brings up choices. I feel like that's helped Kennedy because you have to do it. So you can't say, do you want to do it?
No.
And people are bad about that sometimes. I'm like, you can't say that. You're going to say, this is what we're going to do. But you can give them a choice of which arm, or you can give them a choice of which Band-Aid, you know. Just the little things like that really make a big difference to them because they feel a little bit of control and that they had a choice.
And bribery works as well. Which treat do you want after?
Yes.
Sticker or slushy?
Very true.
or both.
Or both. That's fair.
So I wasn't going to ask hospital essentials, but we talked about it a little bit. So I do want to ask, maybe you have 5. What are your 5? If you're going into bone marrow transplant or a long hospital stay, what is your 5? Got to take it with me.
You've got this one, babe.
Oh, do I? Definitely like a memory foam pad for the beds. Those things are rocks without them. So
It's not a bed. It's a glorified couch that pulls out ish.
Plastic.
Plastic.
Fine.
it's worse than the chairs they give you in the maternity ward for the dads.
Yes.
Amen to that.
2, and this one's probably a not thought of one. We took our nugget in there with us. So it doubled as a playpen for Blayne, a way to get her off the floor. I mean, she wasn't really walking at that point, so we were crawling all over the floor, and I feel like crawling all over the nugget was a little bit better than the hospital floor. And then also served as a secondary bed.
It did. You can just get the twin size like sheets and they fit over it perfectly.
Wow. That's a great tip. And brings up how hard it is to entertain a child in 4 walls for an extended period of time.
Yep. Which brings up probably at product number 3 is the lovely Kennedy Lad Foundation Wobby, as Blayne calls it, or iPad.
Wobby.
That's still to this day what she calls it.
A wobby?
A wobby.
A wobby.
It started with she always wanted to watch Wills on the Bus, which sounded, when she would ask for it, it sounded like wobby. And
It just stuck.
that's what she called the iPad. And literally all of her nurses to this day are like, oh, do you have your wobby today?
That's awesome. I hadn't heard that story.
Yeah.
I haven't either. That's funny.
So that's definitely a must. Like you're saying, it's hard enough to occupy a 2-year-old, let alone in a 6x10 room in the hospital with lines running all the time. So the nugget and the iPad were a lifesaver in there for keeping her occupied.
Top essentials.
Yeah.
Come on, Michael, you gotta let it out. What's the one for the dads that you had to take in there? You can't hold it back.
I was going to save this for last, but the TV. Bring an extra TV.
You should have seen the nurses' faces when we moved into the hospital.
I let them watch the Titans game on the weekends.
That
it
is
was
fair.
great. But yeah, we brought a TV in with like a little Roku stick on it. That way Blayne could watch her Wobby or the TV we had in the room, which wasn't very large. We could have shows on our side, and then when she went to sleep at like 7 o'clock, some nights we would sit on the other side of the room and watch something.
Yeah.
Without the TV blasting light all throughout the room. So that was definitely a must to keep some of the parents' sanity there.
So that's one question, I guess, that I have. I know it was really hard for Allie and I, but how did you all, like, with your marriage, with your relationship, you know, you're in the hospital, you're in the thick of it, you got to take care of your child. But like, what is there some, you mentioned watching shows or watching a movie, like, is there certain things that you all did or have advice for other parents that are going through the transplant process to be sure they nurture their marriage and take care of each other and you know, build their relationship even while going through the thick of it of taking care of their kids?
Well, one thing that was helpful, and I know this isn't feasible for everyone, but Michael's job allowed him to work remotely during this time. So we both stayed there the entire time. And I mean, that was a game changer.
Yep.
I don't know. We spent a lot of time together. And so like being able to like go through that together obviously brings you closer together. So that was really helpful, like having him there, even if he was working, like just having him there.
Just the presence in there.
And then we tried to like resume normal activities while we were there. Like we tried to keep a routine.
Yeah, we brought some dumbbells and some bands in there too.
Yeah, we were crazy.
To do some workouts, just to kind of keep us active.
Mm-hmm.
We would go on our, 4 times a day walk around the 6th floor. They had all the sorts of
like ride on push toys. Yeah.
And so Blayne would go out and pick her favorite one, and we'd go on a stroll around the neighborhood, so to speak.
That is awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did that a lot. And then obviously like we stayed in the Word and prayed and all that stuff. So I feel like that all helped us stay close. Trauma bond. That's what we like to call it.
Trauma bond.
It's a true thing. Like it really is.
I don't know. Did you get to tell your 5 essentials? Did you have one more since you were saving the TV for last? Was there another one we missed?
A fourth.
Okay.
Because memory foam,
Nugget,
iPad,
Wobby,
TV.
TV.
I think that was it.
I was going to struggle to find a 4th.
Ooh, I did think of a 5th one. This isn't really like a thing, but I guess more of an idea. People, you get really tired of eating hospital food, and we're kind of weird about our food and like health and whatever. So people, when they asked what they could get for us, they gave us gift cards to, I don't even remember Clean Eats or something like that.
Yeah, like one of the meal prep places.
That was pretty cool because then we would just go, like he would get out and go pick up our meals, and they had like a community fridge you could put your stuff in, and then we would just heat them up. So then we could still take care of ourselves and not eat hospital food every day.
Or takeout.
Or Taco Bell. Not that I don't love Taco Bell, but
that's a great tip because we spent a lot of money on takeout food.
Yeah.
Insomnia cookies. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
That was bad. Oh.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I had one more to add to that, it would be the sound machine.
Oh, yeah.
Good call. Yes.
Yeah, shameless plug. The Candy Lad Foundation is an affiliate for Yoga Sleep. So
The Dome. Yeah. Do you all use a sound machine?
We do.
Okay.
What's ours called? I keep wanting to say Nest, but I feel like that's not right. I don't know.
That is
It
not
does.
right.
It sounds
that
familiar, though.
I can picture the app on my phone. I don't know. Both of our kids have them, and they change colors, and they love them.
Sound machine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you all have made it through a lot, and you're out of transplant, you're living in your house, you're overwhelmed, but trying to get back to normal. So how did you get involved in being, on a podcast or being an advocate, or what made you, want to go out and tell your story and really make an impact?
I guess the real reason I think we became an advocate was predominantly because of the YouTube videos y'all have that y'all posted years and years ago, going through it.
That makes me want to cringe now thinking about this.
We feel the same way. It's okay because we dabbled in that too.
But that was one of the first MPS related things I stumbled upon on the internet right after we got diagnosis. And I'm pretty sure I watched every video y'all had back to back to back that day.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing y'all were, somewhat local to us, just a couple hours down the road, and y'all had gone through this twice. I mean, y'all just kind of became an inspiration to us, and we wanted to meet the celebrities that started the Kennedy Ladd Foundation.
Oh, that's...
I don't know about
Are you saying you're a fangirl?
I was a little bit of a fangirl, I'm not going to lie. When we met you at the conference, I think for the first time.
Yes, I forgot about that in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when she left me at home and she just took off. Yeah. Okay. I see.
I feel like that was kind of a God thing too. I think we had talked barely, and I had never been to a conference, never really thought about them, I don't think. And then, so this is with the National MPS Society. And when I found out they were coming to Nashville, it was a way for me to go, but not be committed, and leave if I wanted to, and whatever that looked like. And it was only 2 hours from where we live, and it was a way that I could go by myself and not take the kids. Ryan had to work. I didn't leave him behind. But I am a very introverted person. I think I did need to kind of go and experience for myself possibly. But also another mom, Brooke, had come up and met me, and we had a hotel room together. So I don't think I knew that you were coming, and I just happened to see you maybe in the lobby.
Yeah.
But I remember you all coming up there, and it was like instant connection, I feel like.
Yeah.
I remember telling Ryan, Courtney's so much like you, and Michael's so much like me.
We did realize that.
We're very, I'm very high anxiety, and Ryan's like, everything's going to be okay. And I felt that from Courtney. I felt like she was just kind of like a part of a calm in my storm, and it was just kind of, I guess, instant for me that I didn't know these people. I had never met y'all, but there was just something special in that moment that was like, I could tell them anything. Like, it felt so special. It was really hard to leave that conference, and that, I think that's kind of what got me going even more was I want other people to feel this community and what it feels like when you're with other MPS1 families. It was something I couldn't explain. I was supposed to have been FaceTiming Ryan and giving him updates while I was there, and I never did because I was just so
it's a lot to take in. She leaves me out a lot.
It's
consumed.
I'm
I mean,
used
it was
to it.
just, it was kind of magical.
Yeah.
It really was. Wow. I forgot about that.
I know.
I'll have to like piggyback on that as well and say that, because we've like seen y'all, I mean, more now in the last year, but before that, prior to like a couple times a year, golf tournament and the wiffle ball tournament and maybe another time, but like ever since we've met you all, and I mean, I have to say this for a lot of our MPS friends and family, like it almost feels like family, like, like when we met you all, I felt like you were my brother. I felt like you were my sister, and I feel I've tried to explain that to people that are like, not a big deal. The Kennedy Ladd Foundation, the donors are bringing families to the events. And I'm like, you all don't understand when these kids get together, when these parents get together, like it is a special bond that you can't even try to begin to explain. And what I think of Corey whenever he came to the wiffle ball tournament this year, like how life-changing he said it was for him and his family to be with the rest of the MPS1 kids and parents, that, you know, the bond, the love, the support, just like I said, it's something you can't explain, you can't put into words, but just it's just there. I mean,
We were saying that earlier, and this is probably hard for like people on the outside to understand. Doing like the family gatherings is the most normal that like we feel.
Yep.
And I know that makes no sense, but I feel like when we're hanging out with like our normal friends and family, you have to do a lot of like explaining, or you're kind of on your own island helping your kid navigate whatever is going on.
Yeah.
But when we're with y'all, it's like we're all in it together. And like I fully trust, like when we're at the water park, like if Blayne wanted to go over and do something with Lincoln, I know whatever parent is there knows her limitations. Like I don't have to go over and be like, hey, she can do this, not this, blah, blah, blah. Like you all already know. And so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
To just be.
We heard that quite a bit, the families this last time up in the for the Soaky Mountain deal at the cabins, like just, I can be myself. I don't have to put up a front. I don't have to explain this. I don't have to, you know, try to, like you said, just be yourself and be present and enjoy the company rather than worrying about what this person's thinking of you, or, you know, or your child or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
I think seeing it in the kids, we talked about kids, whether affected or unaffected, all kids have different personalities. But when those kids get together, I don't think I've ever seen like a kid be shy. Like it's almost like the same to them. Like they are instant friends. Everybody talks to everybody. Like it's like they've known each other their whole life. I mean, they just immediately start playing with each other. And I think about, you know, if we go maybe to the beach or somewhere or wherever we go out, you know, Kendi's very reserved in a way. If she doesn't know you, if there's another kid her age, she's not going to go over and play with them. Even if they ask her to play, chances are she may not go over. But up there, I mean, my kids are so excited about anytime they get to be with their MPS1 friends, whether they're their age or whether they're younger or whether they're older, just that they're their MPS1 friends is so special. And so I think you can see that innocently in your kids, that that's just the way it makes them feel. It makes them feel normal.
Yeah.
It does. And Blayne doesn't even like, I don't think that she like understands that she has MPS. I mean, I think she's aware she needs more medical stuff than others, but she doesn't know. She's only 4, and she's like Kennedy. She's like reserved in social settings. And when we were up there at the cabin, by the first night, she was wrestling Lincoln in the floor. Literally.
Yeah.
So it's just fun to see how quickly she just kind of gravitates towards them.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even realize the connection they have.
Yeah. And that it's grown. And that's one thing I feel like as the Candy Lad Foundation has been hard to explain what we do. I mean, we do, our ultimate mission and dream is to find a cure for MPS1 and to find better treatment options. But there's so much behind the scenes that's hard to explain, but that the families experience and understand. And I mean, the best way I can say it is hope. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Hope is our best medicine, and we're hope dealers. That the Candy Lad Foundation is hope dealers.
I need a shirt with that.
Not to be confused, okay?
It's our new design.
Dealership.
And hope for me has, or for the Candy Lad Foundation is kind of, I had heard it on a podcast for another definition, but hope is helping one person every day. And that's what's been so special about what the Candy Lad Foundation has become, is the other families getting involved and seeing their light and seeing their involvement, but also what we can do together. So I was just recently in a conference, and he was just talking about movements have always been created by small groups of people. And so I was like, oh my gosh, you know, even more, it lit me even more. We're going to be the next movement. Like if we could get the voices from this small group of people, the MPS1 community, if we could all have a voice and we would all come together, then we would be the next movement. And our movement would be to find a cure for MPS1. So it just really excites me to hear you all kind of give your testimony about what it is for MPS1 kids to get together and some of the work that the Kennedy Ladd Foundation is doing. So really, what do you see for Blayne's future, or what drives you to keep pushing for a cure for MPS1?
Kind of like what you were just saying, hope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of what we operate on, is just the hope that there is a cure, a hope that she continues to, follow the Lord and know that she is special. Hope that even though she has this disease and even though there are some limitations, hope that she finds her place and finds her path out there. I think it's just all about hope.
That was well said.
Stamp of approval.
Yep.
You did well. So just to end it, I wanted to end it with kind of like an icebreaker question, not necessarily on MPS1, but just if you could give one piece of advice to someone facing their own personal challenge, what would it be? How do you rise up in the face of adversity?
You can, like, anytime you're facing adversity, I feel like one of your like instincts is to like isolate yourself and like feel like, dude, I'm going to get emotional. So you are going to have to answer this one. Well, I feel like it's instinct to like feel like you're in it alone. And like, that's not the case. You're going to have to help me out.
As Romans says, suffering produces endurance. Endurance produces
Character.
Character produces hope.
That's Blayne's laugh verse.
So
Yeah.
through the adversity, he is changing you for his purpose. We didn't think we were going to be advocates for a rare disease. We didn't think we'd be sitting on a podcast sharing our story. But that's what he's built our character to be, so that we can have hope for our kids and their future.
That through Blayne's story, that like you never know like who her story is gonna touch. So in a way, it'd be almost like selfish of us to
keep it
in.
Yeah.
So I mean, at the end of the day, she's our daughter, and we're gonna do everything we can to fight for her. But just don't let it put you in a state where you feel like you're all alone, because truly you're never alone.
Amen.
God will get you through anything, but you have to lean on him, and you have to find a community. Yep. You have to get involved. Like, you have to. Because if you don't ask for help, if you don't have a community, no one knows how to love you and support you. So that's really important.
And the love and support that you don't even have to ask for in that community, that just is there. Just like what we touched on earlier. Like, you just get it no matter what.
It's life-changing. Yep. It really is.
I think that's hard to follow up with something. But I do want to say that, just like you saying, telling your story, you don't know whose life that's going to touch. And so sometimes people get paralyzed in fear. And so I think the one actionable thing is, you know your story, and all you have to do is tell the story. And I think, again, back to those key words, when you were saying about us, you said something about they were local or they lived down the road. And so sometimes it is single mama, Tennessee, MPS1, homeschool. It doesn't have to be the MPS1 diagnosis. There's so many ways that people make connection, and you never know what part of your story can change somebody's life. And so we are with you, and that's one reason why we're launching this Cure MPS1 project, is just essentially to use stories of MPS1 families and the 6 degrees of separation to find a cure. And we believe in the things that only God can provide and will provide, and that there will be a cure for MPS1. But it takes everybody's story, whatever that might be, to get there. And so we are just so blessed to know you all. We are so thankful that we got to do this podcast in person, and we're just so thankful for you all sharing your story and the family that you've become. We're so thankful you found those old YouTube videos. It's been years since we've watched them. I don't even know what it ended on, but it's things like that we think, how stupid, how terrible is the quality, what did we say? But from you, it's changed somebody's life. So hopefully there's so much more in that everybody will share their story just as you have. So thank you all so much. I'm moved. I love every time we get together, and hopefully there'll be many more. So
Yes, man. Amen.
So Courtney and Michael, for anybody that's listening, what is a way that they can connect or they could hear more about Blayne's story?
Originally, when we started this journey, we kind of created like our own thing to kind of help advocate and update. But something that we've learned from y'all is it's going to take all of us teaming up together. I think Ryan actually mentioned this last time we were together. Sometimes you feel like you want to go on your individual path to support them, but if we all work together for a common cause, we're going to make a bigger difference, right? So we're going to kind of try to do better with our social media and kind of rebrand Blayne's page to do like Cure for Blayne. And so we will kind of share all of the information you're putting out there on behalf of the Kennedy Ladd Foundation, and then we'll start updating our journey on that page. So that will be to come.
So if you want to learn more about Blayne's story or about the Nashes or connect personally, please click on the links in the show notes.
Don't forget to smash that like button.
Oh my gosh.
So families like the Nashes will be featured on the Kennedy Ladd Foundation for the Cure MPS1 Project. If you want to learn more, you can click the links in the show notes. The Nashes will have a campaign, and they are launching in October of 2024. We invite you to join their campaign and to be a voice for kids like Blayne. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you would like to learn more about the Kennedy Ladd Foundation, we invite you to visit kennedyladd.org. And if you want to hear more stories like today, visit our podcast at Rising Up Rare on Facebook.